What is it called? Drum Talk TV?
Just Drum Talk.
Drum Talk. Okay, great.
So I'm pretty happy with that.
All right, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The thing I like the most is when there is a nice groove. In swing music, you would call it swing. You know, in other musics, other types of music, you might call it something else. But basically, it's when the tempo feels really good, really comfortable. And I'm coming from a position where I grew up listening to Steve Gadd and Jeff Porcaro and John Robinson, and guys who I thought made the music feel nice. Not because of the part they were playing, but just the way that they played the time. It felt very comfortable, and in a way that I've always enjoyed listening to drummers who make the music feel good. That's the first thing, because if they're playing something complicated, it may be interesting, but if it's not really in time, it's not feeling good, then it's kind of pointless to me. Progression in drumming, well, if you mean towards progressive music, progressive music is sometimes it's kind of looked at as an old format. You know, we're talking about Yes and Genesis and, you know, bands from the late 60s, early 70s. But I think true progressive music is really people who are trying to do something new, something we tried to do in Porcupine Tree, and something I've done a lot with 05 Rick, where, you know, we're playing tonight, to try to really play rhythms that you've never heard before, bass lines and guitar lines that you've never heard before, possibly harmonies and sequences that you've never heard before. But from a drum point of view, certainly unique drum rhythms. Otherwise, there's no point to just keep playing the same thing over and over again. You know, with Porcupine Tree, we said we didn't want to make the same record twice. Each record had to be different. Maybe if you heard it and you thought, well, I don't hear a lot of difference. The difference was, from our point of view, we felt it was different. And it's an important thing for me also to, year after year after year, that I keep moving forward. And I don't play like I did 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago. And I know all the things I play. No one's more familiar with the way I drum than I am. So I try to move on and not play some of the things that I used to play in terms of fills, in terms of, you know, grooves and things, just so I can really feel like I've progressed, you know, in the true sense of the word. Yeah, I mean, of course, humans like to synchronize, whether it's moving in the same direction, whether it's dancing together. They like to feel like they're in sync. And really, drumming was probably exactly that, had that purpose, if we're going back thousands and thousands of years. It's about bringing people together, usually for dance and, you know, enjoyment as well. And really that stays the same. Now it's more complex. You know, 100 years ago, the drums were just a dull thud in the background. And when you see film footage of, you know, bands in the 30s, and the drums were very quiet and they were just boom, 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 just to give a pulse. The drums were not a focal point of the band. Not really until Gene Krupa came along and showed that you could be a lead instrument, a solo instrument, and a very exciting instrument. But, you know, sometimes we've learnt to find more interesting ways to play the drums, in the way the drums interact with the composition. Sometimes the drum rhythm is the fundamental part of the composition. In many of the songs that we do, myself and Rick, the drums were the first thing that we decided we liked, and we wrote the song to the drum rhythm. I found a unique drum rhythm, and we started to write around that drum rhythm. So the compositional part comes from, many times in our music, comes from the drums themselves. Whether or not the audience relates to it depends how, rhythmically advanced they are, if they're getting it or not getting it. If you've come to dance to Kylie Minogue, probably you're not going to like the kind of rhythms that me and Rick do. If you like Frank Zappa or, King Crimson or something, then probably you would like the more advanced nature of our rhythmic composition. Frank Zappa compared the way people perceive rhythm, if you compare it to mathematics, as just plus, minus, divide and multiply. But there's a lot more to mathematics than just those 4 simple things. Well, you need an idea. You've got to have a unique, new idea to start with. It could be a lyric, it could be a sound, it could be a chord, a little melody, or a rhythm. It depends. I don't have a formula. The way inspiration comes is a little bit erratic. I don't have a formula for writing. Most of my writing starts with a drum rhythm, and most of that starts from an improvisation. I do a lot of improvising in my practice times, and sometimes, just by magic, you stumble across something, you think, "Ooh, this was nice." So I grab a recorder or my computer, or sometimes I just need to take a pencil and understand what the rhythm is. There's something interesting about it. The moment of creation isn't when you start playing. The moment of creation is when you start to recognize something new is happening, something interesting is happening. I could play for 3 hours and nothing is catching my ear, and then suddenly something will catch my ear that sounds different than something I've played before. So that is the moment I realized something interesting could start to happen. But it doesn't always begin, when I start. I'm very inspired by architecture and design. I can see a lot of similarities between architecture, general design, and composing music, especially from a drum point of view. There's a lot of similarities. It still needs to be functional. It still needs to work as a drum beat, but it doesn't need to be ugly. If you're designing a building and you just went like this with a door and a window, okay, it's a building. It's a very ugly building, but it's functional. And when you compare that to, let's say, the Sydney Opera House, then you have 2 extremes. The Sydney Opera House is a functional building, but it looks beautiful because someone had inspiration to design it. And the same with a drum beat. You can play boom, baff, boom, boom, baff. Okay, it works as a drum beat. We've heard it a million times before. If I can find something else to work in a song without having to go boom, baff, boom, boom, baff, then I'll try to find it. I understand that sometimes that might be the only option, but I will try my hardest to avoid playing the most obvious, the most overdone rhythm and look for something that has some beauty in it. You've got to stop thinking like a drummer. When you really think like a typical drummer, you play in a square. Dum, daf, dum, daf, boom, baf, baga da 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 da. You know, everything's in a little square. You've got to start thinking like a piano player or someone who plays marimba or trumpet or saxophone, and think from a melodic point of view. You know, the more you think differently, the more different you will play. If you've grown up playing rock, pop, drums, it's very hard to get out of the idea of playing straight rock beat with a little fill. And I did that for many years. So, you know, I try to just think like I'm playing a different instrument. It's not necessary that the drums have to play all the time something, you know, some tempo thing. Other instruments can play the tempo, and the drums can float like other soloists do. When guys play solos, they don't worry about the time so much, because sometimes they float. They're not even playing subdivisions that they're aware of. They just float over the top. When you play a solo on the drums, you're always aware of the tempo and where all the beats are. And sometimes it's nice to abandon that. On my first record, I tried to play completely free of tempo, like I was improvising on a saxophone or a trumpet. And then I did these improvisations on the drums, and then I wrote music around those drum solos. I couldn't ever repeat it because it was a completely free form. I was really just imagining that I was playing, you know, another instrument without worrying about, you know, tempo. It didn't need to be in tempo. And then I spent a long time writing melodies with other musicians and making sense of the drums. So it was a nice, unusual experiment to do on the drums. No, I don't. I know the feeling. I have tried changing my drum set round, and it does make you feel different. You do play different things. But I know that really the inspiration's coming from in here. It's not about the physics of, oh, if I put a snare drum here and a hi-hat behind me, maybe I can, yeah, but it's kind of silly. I've had the same basic drum kit layout for the last 25 years because I don't want to think where the sounds are. I know where the sounds are. My hands just go there. Playing left-handed lead can make you play some interesting things. It opens up the drums in a different way. Even playing, you know, traditional grip makes you feel different, and maybe you'll have different ideas when you're holding the stick like this. But at the end of the day, I know that all the ideas are going to come from here. They're not going to be inside my arms or my fingers or where I position the drums. About myself, well, I suppose I'm constantly learning about myself if I'm listening hard enough. You know, I'm always listening. I'm trying to listen in the moment. It's no good playing a concert and then the next morning you listen to a recording of the concert and you say, oh, this wasn't good. Oh, I made a mistake there. It's too late. You can't do anything about it. It happened last night. You need to be listening really in the moment that you're playing. There's no point listening afterwards and then discovering that something was wrong. You need to know. Now, when I make a recording session, I play a take. I know if it was good or bad, or if there was a problem anywhere. I know exactly what was good or bad about it. I don't need to go and listen to it to understand. Thanks for watching Drum Talk. I'm Gavin Harrison. I hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, no, it's good. Very good. All right, thanks. Thanks for bringing so many cameras.